Good morning and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, and I am here with you every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on this station to bring you, the landowner, the valuable information that you need regarding natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. And if you're a regular listener, maybe you can tell, have a bit of a cold here, coming off a bit of a slight little bug, but that's okay. We're gonna get through this just fine, and we have a great topic, a very important topic at the present time. You hear me say often that if you receive something in the mail from a gas company, you should not, in my opinion, simply sign it and return it back to the company. Under any circumstances, you need to make sure that you understand it, and most likely, you need to make sure that you go and you get some counsel by an attorney who's familiar with oil and gas matters. Now, some things you receive in the mail, very simple things. You don't need any extensive legal time spent in it. But some items that you receive in the mail that if you just sign and return can cost you quite a bit. I tell the story, one guy, true story, signed and returned an amendment to his lease, which probably cost him in just the bonus money over about $5.5 million. Just in bonus money, yet alone the impact of future royalties of what he could have negotiated. Now, that's an extreme example, but it is an example. So what we have to look at is, anytime you receive something in the mail, number one, you need to make sure you understand it. Now, another thing that we do, I'll just say this, and not to be overly commercial, but one of the things we do, we get people that send us documents that they receive and say, hey, what is this? Is this something that we need assistance with? Is this a big deal? Now, if it's something that you need assistance with and we think that we can help you and you need legal advice, then I say that. We communicate and say, hey, yeah, think you want to maybe talk to us. Look, if you don't talk to us, like I say often, talk to somebody that knows what they're doing. But don't simply sign and return. If it's something that's not that big of a deal, that signing and returning makes sense, that you don't need to incur a legal bill because the attorney isn't able to do anything for you beyond just explaining what the document is, then in a lot of cases, obviously, there is no legal bill because there's never a legal bill until you have a fee agreement or fee arrangement with the attorney. Or if there is any bill, it's going to be very, very, very small because there's no need to have any legal representation beyond just reviewing and saying, hey, okay, yeah, that's not a big deal. But the most important thing is you need to get assistance to make sure that you're not giving up rights and many times giving up opportunities. I had a case last year. Landowner receives documents, thankfully didn't sign them, that was sent in the mail, called us. End result, landowner received approximately $750,000 in order to sign the document that they could have just signed in the mail. Again, doesn't happen all the time, but unfortunately happens more than you think. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So why am I talking about this again? Well, because it continues to happen, and it will continue to happen. Far beyond this week, far beyond this year, and far beyond next year, you're going to continue to see people receiving lease amendments. And what we're going to talk about in many other amendments and changes of maps. Again, if you're asked to sign a document, please put it down. Call us or call somebody. You can call us or call somebody, but don't just sign. Whether it comes in the mail, whether it's a person at your house, learn more, because you may be, well, you're definitely going to be giving up something, but you may be giving up something substantial or giving up an incredible opportunity. Last one, landowner asked to sign a document, would have received about $15,000. Call, says, hey, what's this about? We go over it, ends up signing, receives over $100,000 for it. I can't stress it enough. And it's something that we can determine very quickly. You send it in and say, hey, wait a second. This is something you have a lot of leverage with. We definitely should talk. Or, hey, not that big of a deal. Here's what it is. If you want to have a more detailed discussion, we're here, but don't know that you need to do that. You're an attorney, and certainly this is the way I operate, but this isn't something special. Don't get a gold star for this. I'm not looking for a pat on my back for this. My job is to do the best I can for every person who I am representing. That's my job. That's what I want to do. That also includes doing it as efficiently and as expeditiously as possible, meaning not running up unnecessary legal bills, not reinventing the wheel when we've done things before, but to give this individual the best opportunities, the best representation that we can provide in the most cost-effective way possible. That's my job, and that's every attorney's job, and hopefully they're all doing that. But it's important that you as a landowner, you get these, and look, we hear them all the time, and it's fine. Believe me, it's fine. You get all these lawyer jokes, which is fine. Great. Some of them are really funny. But the point is don't let this stereotype or mentality, oh, these lawyers are going to charge you a bunch of money. Oh, this is going to be a nightmare if you get a lawyer. Don't fall into that. And certainly don't let the company push you into that, because they, in almost all cases, do not want you to have a lawyer, because they know then, especially if your lawyer knows what they're doing, they know then that you're going to know your rights, that you're not going to just roll over and sign a document. Imagine the thought, or what went through the person's mind when they knew they had a major problem in the company, and they went to the landowner and said, hey, here, will you just sign this document? And that document would have corrected it. And the landowner says, okay, yeah, well, you know what? I'm not going to sign it. I'm going to give Doug Clark a call. He's my lawyer. And again, whether it's me or somebody else that knows what they're doing, that had to be a hole in the stomach for that moment of saying, uh-oh, this isn't going to fly. This isn't going to fly. So our plan to go out there and just hurry up, get this person to sign, it's not working. And now we're going to have to pay because, in this case, Doug Clark, but in other cases, another lawyer who knows what they're doing is not going to let this happen. And that's what you need to do. I say this too. Companies protect themselves in every way possible. You as a landowner, we all know that. We all know that. We all accept that. We all expect that. That is not a surprise to any listener or any landowner out there. We expect it. But then when we turn to ourselves, why would we not protect ourselves and to make sure that we're covering ourselves, that we're exercising all the rights that we can, that we're negotiating with all the leverage that we can? Because that's what the other side is doing, and that's what we expect from them. So we should expect the same from ourselves. I don't know. I can't think of virtually any agreement that I've ever worked on that I have not been able to improve in compensation or language and terms added to the agreement. I can't really, I struggle to think of any. The only ones I can possibly think of are maybe a 1 acre parcel where there's no leverage at all, and the company says, hey, we're about to start producing, either sign or don't sign. And in that case, when I talk to the client, if we have a review and consultation, I explain, hey, here's all the situations, and I guess it's one situation, but here's the situation. And we're not going to be able to change this. And I think that, for example, you should probably do this, or maybe we can change it to say that it would be a no surface use lease, that they can't touch the surface of your property. So maybe we can make it a little bit better. But we need to do this. So this is a very short call, or you need to do this if you want to get into royalties. That's a very short call. We explain it, understand it. So even if you can't improve it, which is so rare, so rare. Even if you can't, you understand why you can't, and you make the right decision for yourself. I am Attorney Doug Clark, You're listening to All Things Marcellus. Make sure you join us every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on this station. So, okay, again, please, if you're given any document, whether it be an initial lease, an initial pipeline right-of-way agreement, any amendment, modification, keep those words in your minds. If you're given those documents or a map change, a route change, do not sign. Put your pen down and call someone that knows what they're doing to find out what is this about, what is going on. A lot of times you're not the only person that is receiving that request. Certainly, these requests in almost all cases are something that we've dealt with before, and we have a very good idea based on history and learning and experience what would be the best course of action for you and your circumstance. You owe it to yourselves, you owe it to your children and your grandchildren to maximize what is hopefully a great opportunity and sometimes generational wealth. So again, remember, if we expect the company to do the best they can, to get the best agreement they can, and we don't fault them for that at all because we expect that, why should we not expect that of ourselves? Why should we not expect it of ourselves? We should. Okay, I'm going to wrap this first segment up here, but what I'm going to talk about, this is all lead into Anadarko has sent letters to hundreds upon hundreds of landowners about Anadarko has engaged in a sale or potential sale, has an agreement to sell certain assets, substantial assets in Pennsylvania to a company named Alta. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the letter that landowners have received, and I'm going to give some general advice or things to have you think about. But as always, not specific advice. Specific advice is go to a lawyer who knows what they're doing and get specific advice. But we're going to talk about this letter and things that you should be thinking about. We're going to talk about that when we get back. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I want to remind everybody too, look, pipeline agreements, Atlantic Sunrise, the time is running out, but other pipeline agreements, amendments and modifications. If you are presented with these documents, give us a call, 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. Do not, please, stop signing bad agreements. Stop just signing. Remember, just because you signed or may have signed bad agreements in the past, let's not compound those bad agreements. It's not too late to stop signing bad agreements and negotiate and sign better agreements. Okay, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Make sure you tune in every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. on this station for the information that you need as a Pennsylvania landowner, Pennsylvania oil and gas right owner, that you need regarding natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. Okay, we started off the show hot, and by that I mean I skipped my general intro. So let me give that again, because one thing I don't want anyone to forget is that I, Doug Clark, from the Clark Law Firm, have not, do not, and will not ever represent oil and gas companies. I represent landowners and oil and gas right owners. That's all. That's all I will ever do. And I'll keep saying it, and we'll keep it on the websites. We'll keep it up there because that's not going to change. That is never, ever, ever going to change. So I represent landowners across Pennsylvania, all across Pennsylvania, for such items as gas lease negotiations, reviews, consultations, pipeline, waterline agreements, royalty issues, unitization issues, doing more with actions against the gas companies. If you think you have a claim against the gas company, give us a buzz. We'll check it out. Estate planning, doing more with that. unitization. Well, I think I said that. Surface use agreements, well pad agreements, any type of agreement or issue, buying and selling oil and gas rights. If you are considering selling your gas rights, call 570, that's my number, 570-307-0702. 570-307-0702. Again, stop signing bad agreements and do not, in my opinion, sign an agreement to sell with one of these companies seeking to buy your gas rights if you have not consulted with a knowledgeable attorney. I have seen so many of these agreements, and I'm telling you, some of them are just horrific. And I don't throw that term around very loosely. They are really, really bad. And you need to watch out because people are signing these and things are happening that they didn't think were going to happen. This is a very tricky area and you have to protect yourself. So if you need representation, you can call us. Learn about what we do. Learn about a review and consultation. Find out if we're right for you. Again, I have clients all across Pennsylvania and clients located in different parts of the country, but the gas rights are located in Pennsylvania. So again, 570-307-0702. And make sure that you check out the websites at pagasleaseattorney.com, pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. You can check them out. Been doing the radio show, All Things Marcellus. We're in now our 7th year. Been doing the show since 2010. Doing the show since August of 2010. So go to the website, pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. Check out prior radio shows. We have shows for every topic. Every topic. Go check it out. Listen to the show. Today's show will be up on Monday morning. So if you can't tune in each week to All Things Marcellus, you can go to pagasleaseattorney.com or pipelineattorney.com and listen to the past week's show. And as we're in winter months and we get rain and snow and you're holed up in the house, boy, you want to do something riveting, go to pagasleaseattorney.com and pipelineattorney.com and binge listen and get yourself up to speed on what you need to know. Remember, the show's never specific legal advice, but it's general advice and information to then ask questions and go get specific legal advice. Again, this is All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So, okay, what we're going to talk about is the letter which Anadarko has sent out, and it's very similar to many, many people, about, and what happens is Anadarko, let me back up. So Anadarko has reached a sales agreement to sell certain rights to a company called Alta Resources Development, LLC. So many leases, oil and gas leases, have language in them that say that a company can, such as Anadarko, who owns the leases now in these cases, or a portion of the lease, all or a portion. So Anadarko currently holds or owns all or a portion of your lease. So they want to now sell or also assign, so sell it to another company, and then they assign the lease, so they transfer it over to the other company, and then Anadarko walks away, which is not an unusual process by any means. But many of the leases that Anadarko is seeking to sell and assign, and we're going to call Alta Resources Development, LLC, we're going to call them Alta. Many of these leases have provisions that give the landowner some authority relative to this assignment. And what I mean by that is that your lease may contain language saying that if a company such as Anadarko wants to assign their interest in your gas lease to another company, in this case Alta, then they have to notify you. Anadarko has to notify you, hey, we want to assign our lease interest to Alta. then you as a landowner have certain rights. And in most cases, I'm going to dive deeper in this in a second, they're going to be the right to consent to the assignment. However, your typical provision is going to say, landowner, if we want to assign our interest in the gas rights to another company, we have to notify you. You have the right to consent to the assignment. However, you cannot unreasonably, key word there too, unreasonably withhold or withhold your consent to this assignment. Also, you can't unreasonably delay giving your consent or even withholding your consent, meaning that if the company asks you, hey, we want to assign this, we are seeking your consent, you can't just sit on that for 6 months. Now, listen, let me be careful. There's no specific time frames in most of these. So what is unreasonable? Well, that's a basis of a lot of things in law. Is something reasonable or unreasonable? But the leases will typically say that you cannot unreasonably withhold or delay your consent. So you're going to need to respond by either granting the consent or denying the consent. The question is, how do you respond? Now, again, not specific legal advice. I am not telling anyone consent, don't consent. But we're going to talk about things that you need to be thinking about and then making the right decision. My advice, my specific advice to everybody, if you have one of these consent letters, that means almost guaranteed that your lease, and pretty much guaranteed, that your lease has language in it that says, if a company wants to assign my lease, they have to come to me and seek my consent. So when you get this letter, that's telling you that you almost assuredly have that language in your lease. So you now have rights. So we need to look at this assignment, the sale from, in this case, Anadarko to Alta, and we need to look at what the terms of your lease are, and you need to make a decision, do I want to consent to this assignment or not? We also need to make sure that, look, maybe you don't want to consent, but if you don't consent, maybe that can have a negative impact on you. Or if you do consent, maybe that can have a negative impact on you. And so we have to very carefully look at these issues on an individual basis. I am Attorney Doug Clark, and you're listening to All Things Marcellus. You can join me right here in this station every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. So let's dive into an Anadarko consent letter. So, okay, holding in my hand, I like doing that. Holding in my hand the Anadarko consent letter sent to a client, prior client who sent this to me. So it starts, dear, it's regarding Ray, consent to assign oil and gas lease. And it gives the information of this particular individual. So then it says, dear sir or madam, Anadarko E&P Onshore, LLC, then comma, Kerr McGee Oil and Gas Onshore LP, comma, Anadarko Energy Services Company, comma, and Anadarko Midstream Services, LLC. And then it says collectively referred to as Anadarko. So there are multiple companies here, multiple companies, which are from now on in this letter going to be referred to as Anadarko. Multiple companies. I would pay a special attention to Anadarko Midstream Services, midstream pipeline. Okay, so it says that these companies have entered into a purchase and sale agreement on December 19th of 2016 with Alta Marcellus Development, LLC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Alta Resources Development, LLC, which we're going to call Alta as we go forward. So this purchase and sales agreement covers, among other assets, and properties all of Anadarko's interest in the above lease, meaning in this landowner's lease. Now, please pay attention closely. And many people have this letter. So if you have this letter, pay attention to this. Go back, listen to the show again on pagasleaseattorney.com on Monday. Pull out your assignment letter. So the next sentence says, pursuant to the provisions of the lease, meaning your gas lease, Anadarko hereby requests your written consent to assign its interest in the lease. Okay, that's totally normal. Then it says this, and upon execution, so it says and number 2, upon execution hereof, meaning this document, Anadarko shall be released from all liability under the lease arising or accruing subsequent to the date of such assignment, as to the part or parts so assigned, and the assignee, meaning Alta, shall thereupon be deemed to have assumed and be responsible for all the covenants, conditions, and obligations of the lease which it was assigned. It says of the lease as to the part or parts assigned, meaning they're going to be responsible. So here's what we're going to do. We're at the end of this segment. I'm going to come back. I'm going to explain this. We're going to walk through this and explain what this means and how some leases may have language that really protect you or require a bond if there's an assignment, and you got to be careful because you can be waiving those rights by simply signing this document. We're going to explain that in much more detail when I get back. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, with you every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. Again, if you are presented with a pipeline agreement, any development agreement, give us a call for at least a review and consultation. Make sure you know your rights. Too many of your people are calling afterwards. We got to call first, early, learn your rights, develop a plan. Let's get a plan in place, help to guide you, and do whatever it is that we need to do to make the best of your situation. You can always call 570-307-0702. I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Remember to join me right here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. And if you have an agreement in front of you or you're presented one, give us a call. Learn about what we do. 570-307-0702. All right, back to it. Quick reset. Many landowners, hundreds of landowners, are receiving letters from Anadarko requesting their consent to assign, meaning Anadarko wants to assign their lease to a company we're calling Alta, and landowners have leases, many do, that say that Anadarko must seek the consent of the landowner. The landowner then either consents or doesn't consent, but in most of these leases, it says in your gas lease that you are presented with this consent to assign. You have the right to consent to the assignment or transfer from Anadarko to Alta. But if you deny your consent, you can't unreasonably deny it, and you can't unreasonably withhold it, meaning delay it, withhold it. So you have to do something. The question is, what should you do? That's not the answer here today. You need individual advice to get your exact answer, but we're going to get you thinking what you need to be thinking about. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So, okay, reading from the letter. I'm going to do it again. What it says is, they are signing, so we're just going to paraphrase, get back to where we were, that this is a letter to the landowner, and again, you have this letter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So upon the execution of this letter, and I'm going to paraphrase, Anadarko shall be released from all liability under your existing gas lease. So when you sign this, Anadarko is no longer going to have to answer to any problems that you may have, whether you even know about them today or not. So Anadarko is saying, hey, we're going to assign or sell this to Alta, wash our hands, wring our hand, wash our hands, we're done, and we're going to assign it and walk away. which, hey, is typically the type of thing you see. However, there are some leases out there that give you added protection, and that by signing this document, you're probably giving away some protection, which for some people may be very, very important. So, okay, again, Anadarko sends the letter saying, when you sign this, Anadarko is released from liability under the lease, and then that liability is going to shift to the new company, in this case, Alta. So in this case, it would be Alta. The last paragraph of this letter says, please indicate your consent by having an appropriate representative sign and date in the spaces below, and return an executed copy to my attention using the enclosed envelope at your earliest convenience. Then it has a place for you to sign and date. So, okay, maybe you want to sign this. Maybe you don't. Maybe you are a landowner who entered into a lease with a group of other landowners. Very common in this area where Anadarko is assigning these leases. You may have entered into a lease under what's commonly referred to as the Wyoming County Landowner Group Lease Form, which is a large form, very, very good lease out there that many, many, many people signed, and has a lot of protections. We talk all the time. When you're going to sign something, you got to understand the ramifications and what are you giving up? What are you benefiting? How are you getting, what is the benefit to you? What is the detriment to you? And make the right decision. So you may have a Wyoming County Landowner Group lease. I would recommend to everybody, determine if you do or you don't, and figure out what your rights are. Also, maybe you have what's called the Friendsville Group lease. Two very common, popular, strong lease forms that have the consent to assign language that I talked about in the last segment. Meaning, if you're getting this letter from Anadarko, it's virtually a sure bet that your lease says that they must write to you and seek your permission or consent. Consent is the word. To seek your consent for Anadarko to sell these assets and assign your lease to Alta. They need your consent, but you can't unreasonably withhold or delay your consent. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Join me right here every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. So, okay, let me give you an example of some language, very powerful language, within the Wyoming County Landowner Group lease. So that lease has language in it saying that no assignment by the lessee, in this case the lessee would be Anadarko, or any assignee of lessee, but for the purposes here, let's say no assignment of this lease of all or any portion of the interest of the lease shall relieve the lessee, which is Anadarko, of any liability for a breach of any covenant, warranty, or other obligation of the lessee or Anadarko in this case, whether theretofore or thereafter accrued. Let me rephrase this and let me paraphrase it some. So essentially what this is saying is, no assignment by Anadarko of any portion of your lease shall relieve Anadarko of any liability under the terms of your lease, whether that liability has already occurred or may occur afterwards. That's pretty powerful. It's keeping Anadarko on the hook. Now, if you recall the Anadarko letter, again, how many times do I say companies aren't stupid? They got really smart lawyers working for them also. We need smart lawyers working for us. Their letter conveniently says, upon execution of this consent to assign document they send to you as a landowner, Anadarko shall be released from all liability under the lease arising or accruing subsequent to the date of such assignment. So what do we have? Again, general information, not specific advice, paraphrasing some to explain, explanation. In sum, Anadarko says, my opinion, we have this lease as an example, the Wyoming County Landowner Group lease that really keeps us on the hook for much more than what we'd like to. How do we get off the hook? Well, let's send a consent to assign letter to all of these landowners, and let's put language in that takes us off the hook. Let's put language in the letter that says we're not liable going forward, that it's going to all be on Alta, who we're assigning this to. How do we get out from under some language which is powerful for landowners in their gas lease? How do we do that? Let's put our heads together. How do we do it? We send a letter saying, hey, please consent to assign. And in that letter, we say, you're also going to relieve us from this future liability. And conveniently, it's all on the same form. And here's your signature line, sign here and return in the self-addressed stamped envelope. Not advice, but look, maybe you are going to consent to this. You could simply write you don't have to sign their letter. If not specific advice, but if you wanted to consent, you could send a letter saying to Anadarko, to this address, dear, to whom it may concern, dear Anadarko, please be advised I've received your correspondence dated blah, 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 requesting consent. Please accept this correspondence as my consent to assign. Boom. That's it. You're not relieving them of any other liability. You're just consenting to the assignment. If that's what you want to do, not telling you to do that. But if you're going to consent, you don't also need to relieve them of liability. You can simply consent. Just because the company sends you a form, an example like this, does not mean that you need to sign their form, because sometimes their form puts some extra information in there that is beneficial to the company. So you say, oh yeah, what assignment? What do I care? Let me go ahead. Where do I sign? No, again, when you receive paperwork, put it down, get information. Get information. Also, just quick example, off topic a moment, but, well, not totally off topic. Shell, SWEPI, sending division orders to landowners. You can hear me. Tioga County, you receive a Shell division order. Read it carefully. Read the indemnification language. Read what it says. My opinion, you don't need to agree to that. My opinion, you should not agree to that. If you have a division order, you've recently received it, call us. Call 570-307-0702. That would be my advice. Or call somebody. But don't just sign these, because there's additional information that may change your lease. You got to be careful. I thought we were past that, but apparently we're not. All right. I'm going to talk more about this assignment. Sorry, I got off track there a little bit. Just remember that. Division orders, Tioga County, Shell. Be careful. Be careful. Okay. So back to this assignment. Just because you're sent a form doesn't mean you have to sign their form. If you're going to assign, or you're going to agree to consent to assign, you want to make sure that you're only agreeing to the bare minimum that you need or want to agree to. You don't want to agree to let them off the hook for future liability, and you don't have to. So if you sign their form, you probably do let them off the hook. If you don't sign their form, you probably do not leave them off the hook, meaning not just not sign the form, but send in something saying, I consent, but I'm not consenting to leaving you off the hook. Again, that's not how you would word it. That's not specific advice. But if you do nothing and you just sit there, it's probably what's going to end up happening is, now that you've done nothing, you have unreasonably delayed consenting, and therefore you will be deemed to consent. So please don't just sit there and do nothing if you think you do not want to consent. But most importantly, that's not specific advice. It's very general advice. Specific advice is call an attorney who knows what they're doing and get specific advice. These things aren't something that takes a very long time. Don't be worried, in my opinion, about, what is this going to cost? It's not going to cost a bunch of money, but you need to understand what you need to do to protect your rights. Okay, this is going to be a good spot for a break. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. You can join me right here every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m., and I'm going to be right back. I got more to talk about with this assignment document and why you need to be careful after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. We're going to jump right back into it here in this final segment. Okay, we're talking about the assignment letter that many, many landowners have recently received from Anadarko requesting their consent, the landowner's consent for Anadarko to assign Anadarko's interest in your lease to Alta, to another company. So they're requesting your consent or approval, but the word is consent, to assign from Anadarko to Alta. If you receive this letter, then it's almost a certainty that your lease says that you have the right to consent to an assignment or not consent. But if you are not consenting, you may not unreasonably withhold your consent, and you cannot unreasonably delay your consent, meaning you just don't do anything or you wait an unreasonable amount of time to either grant or withhold consent. Again, as I'll say repeatedly and have said repeatedly, this is not specific advice for anyone, but please be careful. If you do nothing and you sit around, you may be deemed to have consented. Maybe that's okay, but you need to understand that that's a possibility. As I talked earlier, major concern with the letter that Anadarko provides, and of course conveniently with a self-addressed stamped envelope for you to sign their letter, which is what they want you to do, and return it back to them. Why do they want you to sign their letter? Well, their letter has some very friendly language to Anadarko, specifically in part saying that essentially that once you sign this letter that Anadarko sends you, that Anadarko shall be released from all liability under the gas lease arising or accruing after the date of the assignment. Then all liability would be on Alta, or the person or the company who's receiving the interest in the lease. Now that may seem reasonable, and truly in most cases it is. However, there are people out there who have entered into strong landowner leases. We've been talking about Friendsville and the Wyoming County Landowner Group lease, which is held by many, many, many landowners, that has very positive landowner terms. And Anadarko did not choose these words in their letter randomly. They chose them with great thought because, as I mentioned earlier, some of the Wyoming County Landowner Group language requires that Anadarko would still be on the hook after an assignment, unless, of course, you agree to let them off the hook in case of a problem. Not saying there is a problem or will be, but in case. So if you would have the ability, potentially, if there's a problem, to go to Alta as the new company and also to go to Anadarko as the older company that originally held your lease, why would you not want the ability to have a claim against two companies instead of one? Little hint, in most cases, in virtually all cases, I believe that most people would want to be able to go towards two different companies to seek relief or to address a claim they may have, which that would be the reason that Anadarko puts in their consent letter that they send to you that they would no longer have any liability. Here, sign the bottom of this letter. Please be careful. I don't know that you would want to do that. If you want to consent, not advice for you, but if you wanted to consent, would it make more sense to just say, hey, I consent to the assignment, but I'm not relinquishing any of these other rights that I have in the lease? And so what we've talked about is the lease right saying, using Wyoming County Landowner Group lease, saying that there would still be responsibility for Anadarko. But let's look at another section in the Wyoming County Landowner Group lease called bonding, B-O-N-D-I-N-G, bonding. It says that if this lease is assigned, sold, or transferred in any other way, lessee, or company shall continue to be liable for well plugging, removal of all equipment, structures, and other facilities, and rehabilitation of the affected leased premises, unless prior to such assignment, sale, or other transfer, the assignee, buyer, or transferee provides the affected lessor, which is defined in this lease as a landowner or lessor whose property has suffered surface use by the company. Okay, so if Anadarko put a well site or any other company has a well site on your property, this is very relevant to you. So it says, then it goes on to say that affected lessor must be provided bonds, bonds, meeting the requirements set forth elsewhere in this lease. Now, again, I'm paraphrasing some there because it gets very complicated. But what it's saying is that this lease has a mechanism that if your property was used for surface development and a company, in this case Anadarko, seeks to assign your lease to any third party, in this case Alta, that there is a requirement that bonds have to be provided, and the idea is to protect the reclamation, cleanup, and that of your property. So again, the letter from Anadarko talks about relieving. Again, we'll go to it. So upon execution hereof, Anadarko shall be released of any and all liability under the lease, arising or accruing subsequent to the date of the assignment, and so on and so on. So the idea again, maybe you want to assign, and I'm not saying that you do. Okay, not saying that you want to consent or not consent, not making any judgments. What I'm saying is that if you do want to consent, do you want to sign the form that Anadarko is sending you, or do you want to simply say, hey, look, I'll agree to this assignment, but I'm not agreeing to give up any of the other protection that I have under my lease? To me, that makes a lot of sense if you want to consent. Why give up rights that you negotiated for years ago and strengths in your lease? Often when landowners are presented with additional documents, they are taking away rights that the landowner had. This isn't something you just, in my opinion, say, okay, here, what do I sign? None of these documents are. It's something to say, hey, wait, let me look at this and let me make sure that I am protecting myself. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Now, I know Wyoming County Landowner Group members, and I represent various clients that have been a part or signed Wyoming County Landowner Group leases. And look, there are other questions which you can dive into. One of the things that really concerns me, this assignment, I read that beginning, it's from Anadarko EMP Onshore. It's from Kerr McGee, Anadarko Energy, and Anadarko Midstream Services, pipeline type company here. So if Anadarko assigns the gas lease and their rights to a pipeline or the pipeline company to another company, when the new company, Alta, takes control of this lease and the pipeline company, are they going to enter into new pipeline transportation contracts with the company they just purchased? In other words, okay, here, let me try to create this way. Let's make it simple. Here's a hypothetical. This isn't going to be exactly our case. A hypothetical to make this point easy to understand. You have a company who, say, Anadarko, owns the gas lease. We'll call it Anadarko Pipeline Company. Anadarko says, hey, Alta, we're going to sell you our gas lease and our gas lease company, our gas leases, and we're going to sell you or assign to you all of our rights in the pipeline company. So now there's contracts that exist that say how much money that this pipeline company is charging the gas company to transport your gas. Once they assign these, does Alta then take over the pipeline company, jack up transportation fees, and pass those on to the landowner? What protection do you have against that? Look, hey, maybe they may go lower. Who knows? But you may find that the new company takes over, and now all of a sudden you're seeing extremely high fees for transportation and gathering. Not saying that's going to happen, but saying it may happen. I don't know. Nobody knows. But I'll tell you, we need to be thinking about if this sale goes through as expected that it would, how are pipeline transportation fees going to be calculated? Are they going to be using the same calculation method that they've been using so far when Anadarko was producing under the lease? Or will there be new pipeline contracts in the future, which could be much more expensive, which in turn creates many more deductions for the landowner? Hey, look, maybe they're cheaper, but we don't know. And it's about that information, the questions that we need to be asking. Also, another thing, when there's assignments, you have Anadarko. Go look at the size, the market cap of Anadarko. Go see about, for example, Alta. What is the market cap? Are they on sound financial footing? What is their reputation? There are things that you want to consider when agreeing to an assignment. Look, in this case, we got a lot of issue, hopefully it comes across, that I have with some of this language in the request to assign letter. We have issues with that. That's the first part, very, very big and important part. But we also have, even if the letter just said, hey, will you agree to assign, yes or no, check here, sign here, even if that were the case, and it was a neutral, the way I believe it should be, request for an assignment, even if that were the case, you still want to look at what is the company that owns the lease? What is the company who is receiving the lease? Are they good company? Is this a good company, a better company? Look, sometimes you may say, boy, I'm so excited. I wanted to get away from the first company, happy to have the second company. But we got to look at that. You got to look too. In this world of deductions we talk about all the time, you have to be concerned about this assignment. What impact will it have on my deductions and royalties in the future? You have to be considering these items. You have to. Not specific advice in the entire show, whether to sign or not sign. The specific advice is get some specific advice, because it's not going to be the same answer for every person. And if you have a well pad and you have surface development on your property, as a general principle, I would be very, very slow to sign this document. You have those bonding requirements. You have extra protections built in. Be careful before you waive those protections. Okay. As always, we're going to leave you with a couple really important messages. But before that, look, if you need assistance, give us a call, 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. Love to hear from you. Love to help you in any way if we can. So, leaving you now, I'm going to tell everybody again, look, number one, please stop signing bad agreements. Stop signing bad agreements, and remember, the landman works for the gas or pipeline company, not you, the land owner. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark. Have a great, great week, everyone.